what people don't often think about is they think the legal process is very logical, and it is, but the humans making the logical choices are often driven by emotions in the process. And I think if we pretend that those aren't real, then we're kind of like missing the point. and we'll make mistakes, and people will get to the end of the tunnel and be unhappy.
Hi, Michael Rice.
Hey, Michael, how are you?
Good. Glad to be here.
Great.
Thanks for joining us there.
Yes.
So as Joe said, we've got Michael Rice here, who's an attorney in Los Angeles. So Michael, I'm just going to do a quick little intro of your bio. So Michael Rice is an attorney in the Los Angeles area since 2013. He focuses his practice on family law and tries to resolve matters amicably out of court, including mediation. He practices in a unique style he calls supportive family law.
Michael graduated law school at Seattle University School of Law, where he graduated magna cum laude and served on the Law Review editorial board. After law school, he was a judicial clerk in the federal courts in Tucson, Arizona. Since then, he's been in private practice here in the LA area, working with individuals. Thanks, Michael. So, You're an attorney. We've had a mediator here before. What does an attorney do? I guess in general, and then we'll talk about different hats that an attorney can take. So, what is an attorney, first of all, just in the most basic sense?
That's a fairly existential question for Monday morning.
That is a very lawyer anscer. Very lawyer answer.
What is an attorney? That's almost like law school. It's almost like a Socratic question. Like, right? What is an attorney? It actually is a fairly existential question because attorneys can do a lot of different things. So, attorneys are as different as they are humans. So it's hard to say exactly, what an attorney does, although we all have like the stereotypical things we've seen on TV or we've seen in movies, and we bring a lot of assumptions, I think, when we think of like, what does an attorney do? What does it mean to talk to an attorney?
All right. So, okay, we'll get a little bit more narrow then. In the divorce process, I think Jade and I have talked a bit about consulting attorneys.
Yeah.
Because we both hired consulting attorneys, but I'll be honest, until my divorce mentor mentioned having a consulting attorney in the mediation process, I didn't know what that was. I just thought you hire an attorney or you don't. So,
which normally then meant that you're probably going to go to court as well, in my mind.
Yeah. Right. So what is a consulting attorney? And then we'll talk about just hiring an attorney for divorce separate from that, I guess.
That's an interesting question. So a consulting attorney is one species, I guess, of the genus attorney, right? So that's a pretty direct, narrow question. So the consulting attorney generally shows up if you are trying to resolve an issue, whether it's your entire divorce or whether it's just kind of like a narrow issue about child custody. If you're trying to resolve something out of court, you're working with like a mediator, or you're just kind of going it alone and just trying to like work with your other party to try to resolve it out of court. It's often a good idea to have a consulting attorney kind of in the wings, whether you tell the other party or the mediator or whoever is involved in the process or not is up to you. But the consulting attorney is there just to make sure that you're, protecting your interests as best you can. But usually the consulting attorney would not be representing you.
So, for example, when I went through mediation, I hired a consulting attorney on the side, and I felt like they were the little person on my shoulder helping me. Why would someone want to do that, hire a consulting attorney versus just going into mediation by yourself, which is what I had initially thought people do. Couples go to mediator and you keep it cheap that way. But now I realize that even the mediator said, I suggest each of you hire a consulting attorney. Why would they suggest we do that?
Yeah, and usually, it's a good question. Usually, even in the mediator agreement, most mediators have an agreement that they'll want the parties to agree with each other about how they're going to go about this process. But they're usually, I wouldn't say they're required, because we can talk about mediation. It's kind of the Wild West of family law. But they're usually going to say, I'm strongly recommend, especially if it's an attorney that's the mediator. Not all mediators are attorneys, but especially if it's an attorney, the attorney will be careful to say, look, I'm not representing either one of you. I strongly recommend that you get your own independent counsel to review the agreement. He'll tell both parties that, to review the agreement to make sure that you're good with what's happening. Because to answer your question, there's a reason why people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to law school. It's very, very confusing. It's very complex. And especially in family law, depending on how intertwined you become during the marriage, how many assets you've got, if you've got kids, income, if you've got business interests, it can get real complicated real quick. So it's always good to have an attorney that's basically on only your side, that they're there only to protect your interests. They're a neutral as far as like your interests. It's good to have a professional there just because, like I said, it's complicated.
And they're there to coach us on our legal rights.
Right.
Through the divorce process.
Right. And like I said, and in a consulting role, they're not going to be driving the process. You're going to be driving the mediation process or the settlement process through the mediator. But as the consulting attorney is just kind of waiting for you to get to a decision point or get an agreement that needs to be reviewed. And then you'll contact them and speak with them privately.
So, Michael, are you saying that normally that consulting attorney wouldn't be coming into that mediation session at all?
Typically not. No.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess it would probably be helpful for each of us to kind of talk about how we utilized our consulting attorneys.
Yep.
Because I think I hired mine for a total of 2 hours or 2.5 hours, where I thought I had figured everything out. And then I ran through, because I was mindful of the time.
You didn't even say hello.
I didn't really even... Yeah, I didn't even get into greetings like, how are you? It was just like, okay, here are my questions. Very fast.
To be fair, let's see. Yeah. If they're billing $600 an hour, which some attorneys in LA do, every minute's going to cost you $10, right? So
that's
if you spend a minute talking about the weather, that was $10.
And do we need to actually, Michael, do we need to talk about the weather with you? Do we need to have these formalities like, oh, how's the weather? Like,
it's just Thanksgiving.
Wow. How was your weekend? How was your holiday? Yeah. Do we really need to do that with you if we meet with you?
I mean, me personally, absolutely, I want to do that, and I typically won't charge clients for that kind of conversation. You know what I mean? It's not like I hit the fare button right when you get in the cab and go, because I want to, I do this work because I like to work with individuals. I like people. Like I want to actually get to know my clients, and if they feel like the meter's running while they're talking about stuffing, it's gonna interfere with our relationship. So I always did, I was like, sometimes they call it no charge. I'll just say, well, on my billing statement, I'll say, hey, we talked for 24 minutes, but probably 8 of that was like just goofing off. So, I'll just charge.
So that I see how that would make sense if you initiated like, how was your Thanksgiving holiday or whatever, but would you take personal offense if a client just kind of got down to business and was very organized, but just kind of went through their list with you right away?
It's a good question.
I kind of want to give our audience that, just so that they know that they can.
I think it's maybe something that you could flush out before going into that call or meeting. So,
that too.
Because I think it's going to be a personal thing from what I'm hearing from Michael. Like Michael really does value, from what I'm hearing, Michael, and tell me otherwise, that relationship building. Whereas there could be another attorney who, the moment you walk in that door, he's already started the stop clock on you, and it's running.
Yeah, and you will know. So just to step back a second, if you think about how you're going to even get a consulting attorney in the first place, you're probably going to contact one. You'll find some through friends, family, the internet, whatever, and you'll usually have at least a 20 to 30 minute. Most attorneys will offer a free consultation, so you'll get a kind of sense of who they are as a person and human. And to be fair, a lot of attorneys would prefer if you do exactly that, and they'll have, especially like there's a different generation where it was like, you bring me legal question, I give you legal answer, right? and it's like very like kind of transactional in that way. And some attorneys really like that. There's nothing wrong with that, and they'll do it in different styles. Some attorneys are very, very direct, and they'll tell you exactly. They'll say, hey, here's what you should do. Here's what I think it is, and they'll just lay it out for you. And some people like that because it gives you a sense of certainty. Other attorneys do it they'll still do it fairly directly, but it's a more warm professional approach, which I like to think I do more often. And then some attorneys, just like me, I just like to I like to have a relationship with my clients. And because like, to my mind, if you're going through a family law issue, it's like one of the most like intimate things you're going to have somebody you're talking to, like this person you don't know. And a lot of people think of lawyers as kind of scary, and you're having to talk about some fairly personal things. And sometimes some of the topics that come up are very like the kind of conversations that would only come up in therapy. So, like I feel like my clients like appreciate having a little bit more, you have to build some trust, right? and trust comes from like talk about stuffing sometimes, right? So.
And I guess just like with everything else that we've talked about in terms of hiring professionals, it has to be a good chemistry fit.
Mm-hmm. And I have had some clients who would prefer to just say, look, I don't really want to do that. Like, can I just get an answer from you? And honestly, like I tend to refer them out to other attorneys just because that doesn't work for me. But,
yeah. Okay. Well, I think for me, I did keep it transactional because I was trying to keep it to an hour.
Yeah.
So I had my bullet points.
You could get all your questions answered in the hour.
That's right. So I did. But then I think that's the way she functioned too. So I think some lawyers are probably a little bit more flexible with email, for example, but I got charged for the email, the email replies that were brief.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends. So as Michael was saying, there's so many different variations. And as with any other professional that you work with, you need to interview a few to see who you feel like you're going to get along with and flesh out the communication style and expectations with the professional before you get started.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point there.
How did you use your consulting attorney?
We were talking to the same person there. So we both used the same person there. So I don't know if that actually would count as a consulting attorney.
I think you used a different consulting attorney, actually. Yeah. You used the same person with your ex?
Actually, no. I had spoken to someone. I didn't fully engage with them in the end there, but like I think I got maybe an hour and a half of their time there. I tried to probably go through it pretty quickly too. Like, what are all my options? What should I be knowing? What are my rights? They provided definitely a lot of information there. Maybe they were a little bit too aggressive. I was like, this is going to really ruffle feathers if I go in with all their calculations that they were doing. She actually was even doing calculations in that hour and a half meeting that I had.
Okay. So I think for both of us, when we used our consulting attorneys, it was just kind of like one off or two off.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
And other clients we know of that have utilized the consulting attorney, I don't know, Michael, would you say it's fair? It's like they utilize them kind of as an ongoing coach throughout the mediation process, where it's like, okay, we have a meeting with the mediator, we reconvene with our attorney to talk about what happened and what to do next. Like, would you say that tends to happen with your clients as well, that they can use you on an ongoing basis throughout the process?
Yeah. And again, every family's different, every client's different, every attorney's different. So just the universal answer for, professionals like us is the answer is it depends, right? But I do think that
thanks, attorney.
Yeah, that's right. But I was going to say, I think one thing to keep in mind is some attorneys, let's say if you just want an attorney to review a settlement agreement, or you just want to hire them for a discrete purpose, a real big trend among lawyers, especially lawyers that work with basically like individuals like I do, is you can sometimes find one that will do a flat fee. And so the benefit, like I like to do as much flat fee as I can, partly for that reason, because then we can just talk and we don't have to like be watching the clock all the time. But if it's an ongoing thing where it's like the attorney doesn't really know, like neither of you really know how many meetings you're going to have or where this thing's going to go or how long it's going to take, usually they will probably want to do hourly just because like you don't know what you're signing up for. Right?
Sorry, I forgot. We were going to ask you about this. Can you clarify and let us know what supportive family law is? Because I haven't heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think I coined that term. But before I get into it, to set the context, so that's a different
trademark.
That would not be patentable. It would probably be trademark. But I want to flip the question because I think it would tee up the answer for the question. My question for you two is, as you were getting into your own divorce processes, what I call the tunnel, right? As you're facing the tunnel, what did you think it meant to call a lawyer?
So for me, when I thought about a lawyer, was going to court, at least for me.
Okay.
And when I met with that consulting attorney, I just thought it was a one-off thing. Reflecting now, I saw it as more of something that would probably be some sort of partnership that would lead me through that process as we go back and forward and try and come to an agreement together.
Yeah. Okay, so for me...
And I guess a lot of money.
A lot, yes. Expensive. So for me, I thought that an attorney, generally, a divorce attorney, would tell me about my legal rights and let me know if I was doing anything right or wrong in the mediation process in terms of those legal rights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The reason I asked that question is I think a lot of people, when they think, they'll often, at least a lot of the clients that I've had will say, they'll say, well, I tried to solve it out of court, because they try to do that fairly often without getting lawyers involved.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they think of lawyers as coming in and creating, adversarial processes, right? Or they think of attorneys as being fairly aggressive. And, they're not wrong in some cases. Like I said, where there are so much variation among attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that I had was that, like I said, if you're a client facing like what I call the tunnel, you're about to go into a divorce. You don't really know what your life is going to look like on the other side, but you have to go through this process. Some attorneys, as they take you through that process, are like warriors, right? They're gonna think of it like a machete, right? They're gonna be chopping through the forest, trying to get you through the tunnel. Others are more like, let's just solve the issue and settle it as quick as we can. Others are just, it's somewhere in between that. But my theory is, as you're going through, what I found with my clients is, as you're going through the divorce process, it often isn't just about dollars or cents, or the timeshare agreement with your children, or the legal processes and legal questions, or rights and obligations and stuff like that. What I found is a lot of clients really actually struggle to make all those decisions, just because it's an emotional turmoil period of their lives, right? It's what divorce and death of a family member are like the two hardest things most people will ever face.
Yep.
And so my theory is, and I'm not sure how many of the bar would agree with me on this, but I actually like to think of myself as walking with my clients through that tunnel. And if they, and I think I often say, as I talk to clients who are considering hiring me, as I say, just think about who you want by your side as you go through that tunnel. Because my process is I want to support you if you need time to let your emotions process, because often emotions will drive the legal process, right? As you're, if you're just angry and you just want to destroy the other party, maybe you're not wrong for doing that, because this is your family, this is how you operate. But if you need to just have time to think through decisions and cool down, then I'm here for it. I'm not going to run the meter on you while you're I just need to take a 5-minute break, and calm down, or I want to talk about how this makes me feel. I'm not a therapist. I'm not trying to be a therapist, but it helps to unpack those emotions, because what people don't often think about is they think the legal process is very logical, and it is, but the humans making the logical choices are often driven by emotions in the process. And I think if we pretend that those aren't real, then we're kind of missing the point. and we'll make mistakes, and people will get to the end of the tunnel and be unhappy.
Yeah. I mean, we have talked about that, right? Because the legal process is logical, but then emotions are most of the divorce.
Yeah.
So we tend to try to make sure that our clients are doing self-care, and to the extent that it's possible for them to get therapy or seek support, emotional support
really
from friends or family.
Keep that emotion out of that process, because what's your little coin? Divorce is all about the money.
Oh, yeah. Marriage is about love. Divorce is about money.
Yeah, so you've got to really remove that emotion, and it's hard.
Not remove, but separate.
Yeah.
Or keep it over here.
Remove it from
talk
the
about it over here.
divorce part of the process.
Yeah.
Like the money part of it. Yeah.
There is a lawyer in LA who has a funny quote. I don't know if she coined it or not, but she says, "Marriage is grand, divorce $100,000."
Oh gosh. I hope it's $100,000 to divide versus pay
and
the
look,
attorney.
Michael,
no offense.
Yeah, Michael, you were talking about it beforehand. It's like really, you sound like you've got definitely a unique sort of approach, which is going to be different to other sort of, divorce attorneys. Like Joe's mentioned about the guy down in San Diego there, where it's like, we will fight for you. And it's like, boxing gloves on the billboard or whatever.
The attack ads.
Yeah, attack dog.
The people that are interested in those billboards probably wouldn't be interested in you, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
The person that would hire you would not be interested in that sorry lawyer, in that law firm that promotes very aggressive, painful tactics.
Yeah. I mean, if you go in with an aggressive point of view, there's a difference between being aggressive and being assertive, right? Like you can be very assertive and still get a little bit of leverage in the negotiation process.
Right.
But my theory is like in California, everything's supposed to be kind of 50-50, right? So that's really where we should be going. If you're a client who's trying to like get more than that or trying to push for more than like I think is fair, then there are other lawyers who will do that. But like my objective is to try to get to a fair result. Now that fair word is something you could do a whole podcast about, but like what is fairness? But
yeah, that's a good one actually.
Yeah.
Future topic.
Something that I want to kind of touch on and maybe we can go into a little bit there is like, so you've shared with us about what what outlined what a divorce attorney is, Paul.
And in terms of a consulting attorney.
Yeah. But what doesn't a divorce attorney do for you? What's an unrealistic expectation for a client engaging with a divorce attorney on what a divorce attorney will not do for them?
So in the family law bar, right? So the bar of attorneys is a very big bar. I mean, LA must be the biggest LA County must be the biggest in America. I mean, maybe New York, but I don't know. There are all kinds of different roles they can play. One is you get like you said, I think the courtroom warrior. That's it would be fair for most clients to think that that's what they're hiring, is somebody that's going to like go to court for them, slash and burn, and just get some kind of emotional justice from the other side. And some people are very much looking for that. And I'm not going to, who am I to judge that?
Right.
Right. There are other attorneys who focus more, they're more like me, where I'll still go to court and I like going to court, but the way I do it is a little bit different, where I'm like just more of a professional. And I think one thing that people don't understand is if you are in a courtroom, these places are made to make you uncomfortable. And one thing to know is it's just you. Let's say it's like there are two people in the courtroom. You walk up, you're at counsel table. You're at the petitioners or the respondents. Maybe there's a lawyer on both sides, maybe not. But there's a judge looking at you, and the judge is elevated. They call it elevated to the bench, right? The bench is higher. The judge is looking down at you. They're wearing a black robe. There's a sheriff with a bulletproof vest and a gun next to you. It's not the time. It's only a judge. There's no jury. There's no juries in family law. So it doesn't make sense to make the kind of arguments that you would see on TV, these kind of like impassioned arguments. You will see, if you go sit in a family law courtroom, you will occasionally see lawyers doing that. And there's a way to do it well and there's a way to do it badly. But the judge, you have to keep in mind, these judges, they're on the bench pretty much 4 or 5 days a week. They're hearing anywhere from like 10 to 15 cases a day. Oof. And so they're doing, they're going to spend at most, and this is at least if you're like in what they call law in motion hearing, like the more common hearings that most people are going to encounter. So the judge has only got like 15, 20 minutes for you. And, your whole family, you've got, like you put your family in front of this judge, and you've got this government employee that's going to make a decision for your family. So, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but you got to think about who's presenting you in that situation and like what kind of results you're going to get. Because if you have an attorney who's going to antagonize the judge, it's not going to go well for you. So you want to make sure somebody is very professional and calm.
So I think we should still go back to Jade's question, because you're right. Didn't necessarily get answered, but I think this was a question we were going to ask you anyway. what types of cases? So let's say you're not a consulting attorney, you get hired. You just get
Mhm.
hired for the divorce, no mediation.
Mm-hmm.
Why would a couple want to consider staying out of the court? And what types of couples or cases probably should go to court?
Yeah.
So I think there's one thing. I think you should generally try to just generally most families should try to resolve it out of court if they can.
Why?
I think because
Why?
of that reason, because you're in this courtroom, it's really uncomfortable, and often if you haven't been able to resolve the issues out of court, the judge is most likely going to make you make that decision in the courtroom,
Mhm.
or will make the decision for you. And remember, the judge has seen 10, 15 families that day. They're going to make a very quick decision. Now they're good. They're very well trained in the family. Like, the people say a lot of bad things about family court. The judges are quite good for the most part. They're perceptive, and they're good at making a decision, but they're doing it with like very limited information. So it's much better to try to resolve it out of court if you can, because that keeps you in control of the process. And now, to your question of like, to answer the question, to take it one step further, another reason why you would want to stay out of court is I have seen quite a few clients who assume that if they just to put they've watched too much divorce court, or they're too invested in the process, and they think if the judge just sees what a terrible person this other parent or my ex is, they will just throw the book at them. And that's a very not a good reason to go to court as well, because like I said, the judges are trained, they're impartial, and they go through training on impartiality and judicial temperament. They're not going to do that. Now, it does happen from time to time, but most of the cases, in most instances, it's not going to happen. Now, to answer your other question of like, when should you go to court?
Mm-hmm.
There are quite a few cases where you should. And I do go to court as well. And often those are where there's a big power differential. So if you've got one spouse who, is like either very aggressive or angry and won't come to the media, won't try to settle in good faith, or they're trying to hide money, or they're trying to do things to take advantage of the other spouse, then that's what the judges are really there for, is to be a backstop and say, well, I'm going to equalize the playing field. And they have a whole bunch of tools at their disposal in terms of how they can like equalize the playing field. And
like what?
Yeah.
Well, for instance, what I think is kind of genius in in the system, and I think all states do this, is let's say you've got one spouse who makes a lot of money, and the other spouse is kind of the stereotypical stayed at home, whether it's the mom or the dad, and didn't work, but the other one did.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one now they're getting divorced, and the other one is trying to like the higher income spouse is just trying to like hide money, or doesn't want to pay. Often there will be a fairly large amount of child support or spousal support. They don't want to pay that. They don't want to divide the assets. So, which is, who wants to part with money?
Yeah.
But in California, they're going to have to split it 50-50, generally speaking. And then there's all these calculations for support. The other spouse doesn't want to do that, and they're fighting with the lower income spouse. Here's what's kind of genius is one of the tools that the judges have is they can say, well, clearly higher income spouse, you can afford attorneys, and you've got all these fancy attorneys who are, doing all these things. And then the other spouse can't afford an attorney. So what we're going to do to the higher income spouse is say, you can pay for your attorney and your spouse's attorney. So now, if you think about it, as the higher income spouse, you're paying not only your own attorney's fees, but the other party's attorney's fees to fight with you.
Right.
So that doesn't, oftentimes you just you'll see often like a few a few of the opposing parties, they just have to get 2 or 3 attorney bills, for say $10,000, $20,000, $50,000. And suddenly they're like interested in settling. It's amazing. It's a genius. Yeah.
So actually that's interesting. So you could start at court, or you could get to court and you could still settle after that, so that you don't have to go back.
Yeah, that's right. And that's right. And that's why I was saying the tunnel, everybody's tunnel is going to look a little different. So some people like might get angry. There's a law firm not far from me that is open 24 hours a day. So, and they'll do your divorce case. So you can imagine 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning on Friday night, nothing good happens after midnight. They file the case, right? They're angry. It's so yeah, but you could still settle out of court. And the reality is the vast majority of cases settle without like going to trial. And that's true not only in the civil courtrooms, but the family courtrooms as well. For that reason, it's like, that you just have to go to court a few times to realize how uncomfortable it is. And most people come to their senses.
I can only imagine. So I guess going back to Jade's question and maybe looping it into something else, what other professionals do you work with during the divorce process that you loop in because perhaps things come up that are out of scope for you as the legal attorney?
Yeah.
Right. So what other professionals do you sometimes refer out to your client to I don't know, get addressed that is not part of your responsibility?
Joe, for me, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
This would be an excellent opportunity to plug your services as well.
Oh.
No, but let me answer your question. You will see sometimes if you read some divorce books, one of the first, if you're like thinking about divorce and you're like me and you want to read stuff about it to kind of figure out like, what should I do? You'll see like often they'll say, hey, you need to assemble your team.
Right.
So if you can afford it, a lot of people can't, afford to do this. But to the extent you can, you should. So obviously, like a mental health professional is a great idea for almost everybody. Even people who think they don't need it, it's still a good idea. You should have a financial professional, whether it's an accountant, tax professional, or in your case, somebody that's like a certified divorce financial analyst, right? Somebody that can really help you understand, especially to me, if you have let's use our example, the higher income and the lower income spouse. Sometimes the lower income spouse hasn't been managing the money at all. And so they're basically going to go through a divorce and all of a sudden they've got a equalization payment that's $400,000. And what are they going to do? They need to know now you have to manage money and you've never done it before. So it's good to have a financial professional. Often sadly, like a family house has to be sold. So you might need a realtor. There are also, a lot of people don't know this, there's kind of a growing field because a lot of attorneys don't work the way I do. So to fill that gap, there's also something called, there are a number of divorce coaches. So there are 2, which I actually went through the training once. It was very good. There are 2 different training academies that I know of. One's called the CDC and the other is called the Divorce Coaching Academy. They're both very good. They will tend to touch on a lot of topics, but one of the things they're very good at is like, especially if you have a custody issue, that can be very emotionally, draining. So they're very good at like kind of working through the nitty-gritty details. And there's so many other professionals that you might encounter in the process, depending on how complex your case is. There might be other lawyers that come in that are called minors counsel that represent the children. There may be, they're basically social workers that come in and do parenting plan assessments that the court may or may not order. You may come across a lot of characters in the tunnel.
All right. So, Jay, do you feel like that?
Yeah, no, that does. Yeah, thanks, Michael, for answering that.
I probably missed a few too.
Thanks, Joe, for rephrasing my question earlier.
Yeah. All right, Michael, we're getting towards the end of that episode, but any last thoughts before we totally confuse you with divorce this or that?
Yeah,
I'm scared. No, I think the last thought I have is I often tell clients this. I say, as you're assembling your team or as you're like going through this process, I often say, be very careful who you talk to. And, I'll often say, I think you should have an attorney, which just because I'm biased doesn't mean I'm wrong about this. But the point of like an attorney or a financial analyst or a realtor to a lesser degree, and a therapist is you want somebody that truly is invested in only your success. So even if it's a consulting attorney, somebody who actually cares only about you and what results you want. And I think sometimes people just out of like habit, they'll turn to friends or family, which is not wrong, but you have to be careful because sometimes A, they may not really know what they're saying. 2, they might be projecting their own divorce or experience on you. And 3, they may not actually only care about you. They might they might be mad at the other person. They're trying to drive you or fuel you. So just be careful who you talk to. And to the extent you can find independent support from people who truly care about your success, try to find those folks.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And we've spoken about that beforehand. Like all too often, I think we have our friends who, as much as they might love us, be giving us wrong information there.
Or just be biased, right? Yeah. So you just said, Michael, your friend could be really mad at your ex-spouse, or there are actually those friends or family members that say, well, they've been abusing you. Anyway, you could just work it out and stay for the kids. Right? That happens a lot too.
Yeah.
So just reaching out to some impartial third party that could be partial to you and your rights and interests. All right, Michael, it's time for divorce this or that. Here is your challenging question. Okay, as an individual, we're not saying that you'll get divorced, but let's say you're considering divorce hypothetically. These are your two choices if you're looking into the future. You can settle out of court, go through the mediation process, but it's super messy and sort of embarrassing because all this messy, embarrassing laundry has to come out.
Yeah.
Compromising details about the divorce in order for it to settle out of court. Or, and it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Or you could go to court, get divorced in court, nice, tidy, but 3 times as expensive.
Yeah.
Which one would you choose, Michael?
Am I going first or are you guys?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You're the guest.
You're the guest.
Guest of honor.
Be rude to go us.
Well, I might influence your answers because what I would say is I would rather have the messy stuff come out in private than risk the messy stuff coming out in open court in front of a gallery full of people watching. Because that messy stuff can show up in the courtroom too.
So which one is your choice?
Just to be clear. Private mediation for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Which one would you go, Joe?
Well, I have no messy laundry. Just kidding.
Oh, whatever.
I'm clean as a whistle.
So you would go for 3 times the price through the court system, I guess.
Look, if it was just ripping the Band-Aid and it was clean and tidy, and I could afford it, I'd just go through the court system and get it done. But I guess if I wanted to save money or if I needed to save money, I don't care. The spouse already probably knows all my laundry.
Yeah. I'd go with the out-of-court option too. Dirty laundry doesn't bother me. So whatever dirty laundry, whether it be on my side, my ex probably knows. And if they're my family, they
probably already know anyway.
And hopefully they'll just, get over it. So, yeah.
Time heals, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So
I think we're all in agreement on that one then, yeah?
I mean, in fairness, the court process could go faster. Like the mediation would drag on and on and on.
Exactly. So again, if I had the funds for it and I could just get it done quickly, I would.
Okay.
Yeah. So one more fascinating episode of Cover Your Assets with our guest, Michael Rice, divorce attorney. Michael, thanks for
thank you for
today.
Taking your time every week to join us and sharing that useful information about a divorce attorney.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And in case I don't have a chance to tell you, happy Divorce Day 2025. It's coming up. So it's the day after New Year's Day, whatever the first business day is National informally the divorce day.
Why is that? Is that because people don't talk about it until the holidays are over? Or?
Well, if you think about, if they were thinking about getting divorced all year, and then they go through the holidays and all that craziness, and and they're not going to get divorced, 2 weeks before Christmas usually. So and then they'll go through New Year's and they'll say, "This is finally the year. I'm doing it." And divorce law offices are going to be busy. They're almost universally busy the first day after
Interesting.
New Year's.
All right. Well,
so it's coming up. So mark your calendar.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed this episode.
And we'll see you in a couple weeks.